Good afternoon. Howdy. My name is Robin Papaduke, and I'm the Executive Director of the George Bush Presidential Library Foundation. On behalf of President and Mrs. Bush, welcome to today's William Waldo Cameron Forum featuring House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. We are delighted that Mr. Cantor could take time from his busy schedule in Washington and the pressing business of the Capitol to be with us here today. Before we start today's program, I have a few announcements and acknowledgments I'd like to make. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Flo Creighton for her generous support of the Bush Library Center throughout all the years, in particular for her support of the Cameron Forum in memory of her father. I'm delighted that Flo could be here along with her nephew, Rick Boswick. Flo, thank you once again. Congressman Flores cannot be with us here today, but his lovely wife, Gina, has been able to join us, so I appreciate Gina being here with us today also. Our program this afternoon is being webcast, so a special welcome to those who will be watching us on the internet. Mr. Cantor will speak for approximately 30 minutes this afternoon, and following his remarks, he is willing to take questions from the audience. If anyone would like to pose a question to the Congressman, you can do so by using the microphones that are pre-positioned in the aisles, in the center aisles. Thought I lost my glasses there. Representing Virginia's 7th District, Eric Cantor has served in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2001. In the wake of the 2010 midterm elections, Eric was elected by his colleagues in the House to serve as the Majority Leader for the 112th Congress. In Congress, Eric has earned a reputation as a strategic thinker and ideas-driven conservative. He has been described as the Republican Party's communicator, rainmaker, and consensus builder. A former small businessman, Eric has emerged as a leading voice on the economy and job creation. He serves as the chairman of the Congressional Task Force on Terrorism and Unconventional Warfare. In Congress, Eric has worked to lower taxes, eliminate excessive regulation, strengthen small businesses, and encourage entrepreneurship. He has long been a key player in health care, fighting for greater choice for families. He authored the Tax Relief and Health Care Act of 2006, which made it easier for families to save for their health care needs through health savings accounts. The legislation became law in late 2006. Eric also co-authored the New York Times best-selling book, Young Guns, A New Generation of Conservative Leaders, with Representatives Kevin McCarthy and Paul Ryan. Eric is a lifelong resident of the Richmond, Virginia area. He received his law degree from the College of William and Mary and his master's degree from Columbia University in New York. He and his wife, Diane, have 3 children. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a very warm Aggie welcome for Congressman Eric Cantor.
Howdy. Howdy. Really great to be here in Aggie Land. First time in College Station. I'm honored to join you today. Dr. Papaduke, thanks for that kind introduction. I'd particularly like to thank the one who the school is named for, President Bush. Thank you, First Lady Barbara Bush. Appreciate the invitation to come before you today. It's an honor to address the George Bush School of Government and Presidential Library, a beautiful museum, a fitting tribute to a man whose life reads like a novel, a star athlete, a war hero, father, businessman, congressman, ambassador, CIA director, grandfather, and president of the United States. And I must say, the George Bush Presidential Library is as much a tribute to our former president as it is to a woman who's not only stood by his side for more than 66 years, but accomplished so very much in her own right, America's First Lady, Barbara Bush. As our nation prepares to salute and honor all the men and women who have served in our military on Veterans Day, it seems fitting to be here at A&M. Veterans Day, after all, used to be called Armistice Day and commemorated the end of World War I, a war in which so many Texas A&M graduates served their country valiantly. In fact, by 1918, 49% of all graduates of this college were in military service, more than any other school in America. I couldn't think of a more fitting home for the Bush School and Library than a campus that places such value on public service in whatever form. These values will be carried forward deep into the 21st century and passed along to the next generation of Americans by all of you. Today, the American dream, built on hard work and education, is facing challenges, as is the hope that has always set us apart and made America such a special place. I'll be candid. Our national dialogue and the direction of our national policy today is headed in the wrong direction. Too many in Washington are focused on dividing America rather than uniting us together. 12 months before an election day, I understand why. Divide and conquer is a fine election strategy, but it does not make for sound national policy. Many of us are asking, what does the future hold for our country? And in a much bigger way, what kind of country are we going to leave for our children? Who are we? What is it to be America, American? And importantly, what must we not become? When I think about the kind of country I want to leave my kids, I think about the reason why my family came to America in the first place. My grandmother and her family fled religious persecution to come here at the turn of the last century. Like so many of her generation in Eastern Europe, my grandmother faced a future where no matter how smart she was, no matter how much she worked, now how much she studied or learned, there were limits. Just because of who she was, where she was born, who her parents were, there was but so far she could go. But our country isn't like that. It must never be. America offered and still offers an immense and authentic opportunity. My grandmother eventually made her home in my hometown of Richmond, Virginia. As you can imagine, in the early 20th century, the South was not a very friendly place for a young Jewish woman. Widowed by age 30, she raised my father and my uncle in a tiny apartment above a grocery store that she and her husband, my grandfather, had opened. She worked day and night and sacrificed tremendously to secure a better future for her sons. And sure enough, this young woman who had the courage to journey to a foreign land with hope as her only possession lifted herself up and her children with her into a more comfortable, secure, and opportunity-filled place. To her, it was about building a better life to leave her kids. She made her own American dream into reality. This made her an American. Not middle class, not working class, certainly not upper class, just an American, period. Through her hard work, her faith, she was even able to send her two sons to college. All she wanted was a chance, a fair shot at making a better life for her two sons. She got that shot. She made the most of it. Now, this is not just the stuff of American dreams, but also something much more. It is the grand American promise. The promise is that you work hard, you play by the rules, and in our nation, you are afforded an equal opportunity to earn your success and a better life for yourself. our nation makes that promise to her people. In turn, our people promise to each other that we will cherish this unique freedom and work to make the most of it. In deciding as a country who we're going to be, we need to be sure that the opportunity that my grandmother seized is still here for all of us. Make no mistake, our way of life in America is not a given. Unless our laws protect it, unless our leaders respect it, and unless our people pursue it, it will wither and eventually disappear. And we must not let that happen. We must protect that fair shot, that no matter where you are, where you're from, who you are, everyone has access to that opportunity to earn success. The basis upon which America was founded and the basis upon which America thrives is providing people with equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. This distinction is important. It is the tipping point between what America has always been and still is, though less and less, and what some want America to become. And this is what I've come to speak to you about today. There is a ladder of success in America. However, it's a ladder built not by Washington, but by hard work, responsibility, and the initiative of our people. My grandmother worked her fingers to the bone so that her sons could have a better life. Her sons, my dad, didn't disappoint her. He respected her sacrifices that sent him to college. He took that opportunity and started his own business in real estate with little more than the drive to succeed. Emulating my grandmother's work ethic, he was able to provide a quality of life for my mother, brothers, and me. Why? For the very same reasons that inspired my grandmother. He wanted a better life for all of us. It is this foundation, hard work, faith, family, and opportunity, that provides each of us with the prospects of unlimited potential here in America. Each generation is able to get a little further ahead, climbing up the ladder of success in our society. But how quickly you move up or sometimes down should be completely up to you. Much of the current conversation, though, in politics today has been focused on fairness in our society. Republicans believe that what is fair is a hand up, not a hand out. Now, we know that we all don't begin life's race from the same starting point. I was fortunate enough to be born into a stable family that provided me with the tools to get ahead. Not everyone is so lucky. Some are born into extremely difficult circumstances with severe obstacles. The fact is, many Americans are coping with broken families, dealing with hunger and homelessness, confronted daily by violent crime, or burdened by rampant drug use. Recently, I was asked, what does your party say to that 9-year-old inner-city girl who is scared to death growing up in a life of poverty? What can you do for that little girl? Well, we know there are no easy answers, but I believe that child needs a hand up to help her climb to success on that ladder. She also knows she needs some guarantees in life. She needs to know that the rules are going to be the same for everyone. That although she may have to work harder because she's starting at a different place than most of us or many of us, she needs to know that she's got a fair shot at making it in America. She also needs the advantages of a solid family around her and a community that encourages her to learn and work hard. She needs some semblance of stability. The question for us is, how are we going to help provide that? Stability starts at home, but it can extend to places of learning as well. especially for those children facing the toughest circumstances. We need to ensure access to the best school available in her area. If that is a public school, great. Some say charter schools help to provide greater stability, and I wholeheartedly agree. Few know more about these efforts in charter school development than the Bush family, whom have been at the forefront of efforts to provide educational access and educational stability. In fact, I know of no person more dedicated to education reform in America than your son, the former governor of Florida, Jeb Bush. Jeb has been tireless in his crusade to promote education and charter schools to those children most in need. And I remember once speaking to him about his experience in Tallahassee. And he said to me, if you really want to ruffle feathers, go and tell parents that a school they're relying on has failed their child. I thought about that, and you know what? Ruffling a few feathers leads to what Governor Bush found is the key to education reform: parental involvement. Why? Because parents taking more ownership of their children's education provides stability to that child, to the family, and to the community around them. Now, when it comes to education, if Jeb is the apple, he doesn't fall far from the tree. The Barbara Bush Foundation has awarded over $40 million for teachers and volunteers to help parents and their children learn and read together. These family literacy programs are laying the foundation for parents to get active, to be involved in their children's future. Every child in America deserves an excellent education. It doesn't matter where a failing school is, if it's in the city or a suburb, a wealthy or poor town. Better schools benefit everyone. That little inner city girl deserves a hand in attending a better school, a chance at greater stability, and opportunity for her to earn success and happiness. No doubt, as a nation, we must make education a priority, because if our schools fail, we all fail. But parents themselves can also use a helping hand in these times. Take a single mom, one who may be living down the road in Navasota. After she puts her kids to bed and lays her head down at night after each grueling day, she may be wondering if her job will still be there in the morning. She's probably stopped dreaming about moving up that ladder. She's most likely just worrying, hoping, praying that she doesn't fall off of it. We need to find a way to restore her faith that moving up the ladder of success in America, even slowly, is still possible for her in this country. That mom sacrifices most of her life for her children. She lives paycheck to paycheck. Maybe she works 2 or even 3 jobs and has to worry about how she can take her sick child or parent to the doctor. Maybe she'd like to attend a play that her little girl is performing in school, but has to work. What's this working mom to do? How can we provide both her and her children just a little bit more stability? When asked, many working moms say what they need most is just a little more time to spend with their kids. We should find ways to encourage employers to provide working parents greater flexibility. Everyone plays a role in educating children. If parents have the opportunity to be engaged, it will only increase the children's potential for success. And one option is to allow the private sector workers the ability to negotiate with their employers to choose between comp time or overtime pay, a benefit that federal, state, and local government workers have had for years. Now, does this solve all the problems? Of course not. But maybe with a little hope and a helping hand that makes life just a little easier, that single mom can send her kids to college one day, and just maybe her children will be like most of you. Now, you all here at the Bush School and A&M will be much better positioned than most to land a job when you graduate. But for the majority of young people in our country, it is a small business that will give them their start. These employers are the restaurant owners, the healthcare providers, the family farms, the small high-tech startups. Small business men and women. They're the key formula, secret to success of opportunity in America. Each one of them took a risk and did whatever they need to follow through on that. They dipped into their savings. They borrowed from family to start their dream. They committed countless hours in determination. They committed their lives in pursuit of that dream. These small businessmen and women may employ just a few people, but each one of those people is able to start building a better life for them and their families just because one individual was bold enough to take a risk. That's why we should make it easier for people like that, the employers of America, to start on their dream. Last week, the House of Representatives passed 4 bipartisan bills to make capital access more easy by easing regulation on small businessmen and women and giving them a hand up to achieve their dream. The bottom line, we should be about lowering the threshold for entry into the marketplace, leveling the playing field for small business people to enter the playing field. We need to get government out of the way so investors, entrepreneurs are more freely able to begin going about investing, starting up companies, and embarking on their dream. Now, in America, happiness is defined as a pursuit. And that definition comes from our founders in the Declaration of Independence. Pursuing both happiness and independence derived from the ingenuity and grit of the American people, not their government. That makes America special and different than any other place on earth. And here's an illustration. Last year, I received a letter from a Stanford MBA student who had taken the year prior to work in England. He was amazed how differently entrepreneurship, risk-taking was regarded in Europe, how opportunity there seemed limited, how existence seemed dull, and how hope was nearly missing. The friends he met said they couldn't even imagine an entrepreneurial hotbed like Silicon Valley existing in Europe, or how they'd even handle such an amazing chance to advance. He wrote, "Starting a business, even if you fail in the process, is a badge of honor in the U.S. But in Europe, entrepreneurship is often frowned upon, and consequently, the best and the brightest are afraid to take a risk. Even though they're very smart and educated, when I asked them about their career path," he said, "no one ever mentioned starting a business." Now think about that. In America, starting a business isn't something that's only possible, it's something expected. But today, even that is being questioned. People in our country have become afraid to take a risk. Many have lost their optimism about our future. They're frustrated. And at the core of this frustration stems from a belief that the same opportunities afforded to previous generations no longer exist today. And at the core of this frustration is that the playing field isn't equal. In a recent poll, 82% of Americans think that their children will be worse off than they are. You got to ask, what happened to the hope of of surpassing the success of your parents? What happened to the unyielding American exceptionalism and the sense that in America, impossible dreams are possible? What happened to the exceptionalism embodied by this country's greatest generation? Those who work not just for recognition, not just for wealth, but rather because it was the right thing to do, and doing the right thing provided benefits to all of us. It is this mindset, the mindset of good and decent men, like George Herbert Walker Bush, that built America into a superpower. It is a mindset that today seems to be lacking in Washington. Instead, there are those who want to divide America by turning those with less against those with more. They claim that these people have now made enough and haven't paid their fair share. The truth is that Washington needs to stop taking the income of hardworking American taxpayers and instead start rewarding their success. Now let me ask you a question. How many of you think Washington spends taxpayer dollars well? Even if you believe Washington had the best of intentions, its track record is just not good, which our $14+ trillion of debt demonstrates. Instead of asking Americans to give even more, we're better off stopping all tax increases and instead forcing Washington to do more with less, just for once. Why shouldn't we create simple, clear, and fair rules that apply equally to all Americans? And then let you, the people, decide for yourselves who you'll become, how much you can earn, and what you'll do with your life. It's time for us to regain the aspirational spirit of our people. Honestly, it's time to double down on the American dream. We should all aspire to success. We should all dream to achieve. Why? Because when people are successful, they're positioned to use their talents to help grow our economy and to give everyone a hand up the ladder and the dignity of a job. We should encourage success because successful people can extend their creativity and generosity to helping build the community infrastructure that provides a hand up and a fair shot to those less fortunate, like that 9-year-old little girl in the inner city. These groups of successful innovators are the leaders of companies that create life-saving drugs for our sick parents and children. They take risks, like President Bush did with his military and public service, or like many others do by creating companies that employ our families, neighbors, and friends. They are also the social entrepreneurs who support the charter schools, the opportunity scholarships, the private job training programs, the community centers, and the elements of community life that provide that stability and constructive values to children and their families who are struggling. They are trailblazers, like Steve Jobs, a man who started with an idea in his garage and ended up providing iPhones and iPads to millions and changed the world. Job building and community building are what successful people can do. Through his example, you can see that America needs more than just a jobs plan. It needs a Steve Jobs plan. In a Steve Jobs plan, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it doesn't matter. Because in a Steve Jobs plan, no American, regardless of their current condition, believes that they're unable to rise up. And in a Steve Jobs plan, we don't believe that those who succeed somehow take away from those still working their way up the ladder. Why? Because those who earn their success not only create good jobs and services that make our lives better, but they give back and help everyone move just a little bit further up the ladder. And everyone wins. So instead of talking about a fair share or spending time trying to push those at the top down, elected leaders in Washington should be trying to ensure that everyone has a fair shot and the opportunity to earn success up the ladder. The goal shouldn't be for everyone to meet in the middle of the ladder. We should want all people to be moving up and no one to be pulled down. Now, how do we do that? Well, it can't simply be about wealth redistribution. You don't just take from the guy at the top and give to the guy at the bottom and expect our problems to be solved. But it does have to be about fairness. Over the last few years, America has seen too many favors for the politically connected, too many handouts for the most irresponsible, and too large a bill for everyone else. This is a step backwards. It does injury to the American dream, and it violates that American promise. It hurts in real lives and real dollars, this country that we love. It punishes the exact behavior that we must reward if ever we are to grow our way out of the economic darkness. Now let me talk about what we should reward. A recent survey of over 500 successful entrepreneurs found that 93% came from middle or lower class backgrounds. Most of them were the first in their families to launch a business. We should reward them. We should try to make moving up the ladder a little bit easier for them. We can help to do that by making sure there's fairness at every level of the economic ladder. We must ensure that those who abuse the rules are held accountable, and that those who work hard and play by those rules can get ahead. We must ensure that the solution to wealth disparity is wealth mobility. We must give everyone the chance to move up. Stability plus mobility equals agility. And in an agile country and society, people are always climbing and succeeding. The key to economic empowerment is ensuring income mobility. To me, economic empowerment means you can make more and achieve more this year than you did last. And for too long, indicators reflect the reverse. Too many people aren't moving up. But our efforts should be geared toward figuring out how to accelerate that income mobility. From how we help those who are unemployed, to ways to encourage entrepreneurs to start up new businesses, to encouraging the best and the brightest to stay here in America once they leave places like Texas A&M. There are many solutions that will help people succeed and grow our economy. As Americans, we care about everyone. We should want everyone to be successful. We want everyone to see the path forward. Now, Veterans Day is this Friday, and as a nation, we will celebrate and honor those who have served. And may each of us use this opportunity as an occasion to give rising to the American dream. Let us remember to honor those who give life to that dream by wearing the cloth of this great country. And most of all, let each and every one of us of the 9/11 generation work just a little bit harder to ensure that the America that our troops come home to is worthy of them, one worthy of their sacrifice. Now, there's a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It is one of the most influential books of the 20th century, written by a man named Viktor Frankl. He had a vision that I share. On the east coast of our great country stands the Statue of Liberty. But on the west coast, said Frankl, should stand a statue of responsibility. And in my vision, when these two statues join hands, the American people create a bridge that spans the whole country, a bridge of opportunity, And on the pillars of that bridge, we must erect our ladders with those who are successful, extending their hands to those who wish to climb. It is students like those of you here at A&M, the successful leaders of the future, who can be the designers and builders of those ladders. It is you who can determine the direction, the duration, and the durability of America's ladders. And who knows, some of you might forever change the world like President George Bush did. But as you move upward, don't forget that we want everyone to be moving upward alongside of you. As you move upward, hold out your hands and help pull others just a little further up that ladder. Help them move up in your school, in your community, and in your workplace. That is who we are as Americans. That is what we do. We should all be committed to America's rising. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman, for those inspiring and thought-provoking comments. We have time for a few questions, so if the audience members would like to take advantage of this opportunity to pose a question, please feel free to do so. Okay, we'll start with this gentleman here on the right.
Thank you for coming to Texas A&M. We appreciate that a lot. Most of us recognize that the budget needs to be cut and the deficits need to be reduced, and the long-term federal debt needs to be reduced or eliminated. And I happen to watch C-SPAN every now and then when I get a chance, and of course it makes me a little more cynical. It's probably not a good idea. But anyway, I watched it quite a bit this summer too, and I know the Republicans have been advocating cutting the budget, and they've been preaching that for like all year or more, and that's all you hear. But I also watch the appropriation bills, especially during the summer, and when the appropriation bills would come up, like on the water and some of the other bills, amendments would be introduced to trim them a little bit, you know, some of the water bills and some of the other bills. And however, those bills those amendments would never pass. And the Republicans, along with the Democrats, would pass them, and the Tea Party people would vote against them, and yet they would pass. So those appropriation bills pass, and they pass, and they pass, and if we keep passing appropriation bills, we'll never cut the budget deficits. So there's got to be some way or another that we can encourage our congressmen and the whole Republican Party, or Democrats, everyone, to vote to trim these appropriations bills, because that's where the money is.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The appropriations process, as you know, starts after we pass our House budget. And if you recall, back in March, we introduced our budget to a lot of fanfare and controversy because our budget was crafted at a level that was $31 billion below last year's level of spending, and that's for the discretionary piece of the budget. But in our budget long term of the next 10 years, what we called for was a reform of the design of the real issue that's driving the deficits, which is health care entitlements. But that framework provided the blueprint, if you will, for the appropriations bills. And so the appropriations bills were drawn to that number that was $31 billion below last year's level. And it was a negotiated figure. It was voted upon and approved by the House, basically in a very partisan vote, because our side voted to cut spending for the first time ever, actually reduce spending. And that's not Washington reduce, that's real reduce. Because usually in Washington, if you reduce the rate of growth, it's reduced. But no, this was actually cut. So it was the deal that was set in place prior that those appropriations bills came to the floor on, and that was why the committee, and you saw most of us, support the reduction in spending, because we were trying to craft our bills in coordination with that budget that was passed that was maligned by the other side as cutting too much. So again, I think the amendments that were brought to the floor, not all of them failed, most of them did, but again, the sense was that the committees had worked to the balance to try and get to that number that we set out on our budget.
Okay. Let's just go to this young gentleman on the other side.
Howdy.
Howdy.
I'm Fernando Sosa, freshman here at Texas A&M. How important do you think it is for members of Congress to endorse a presidential candidate who has a strong economic record? And do you have any intentions of endorsing a candidate anytime soon?
First of all, I think that your question, underlying your question, is the issue that is confronting this country, and I believe will be the issue that is of primacy in the November 12 election cycle, and that is jobs in the economy. And the reason is, there are 14 plus million people unemployed in this country. There's too many people, as I spoke of, that are really feeling down and out. There's 4 million plus people that have been out of work for over a year. That's the size of the whole state of Kentucky. And so we've got a real problem in trying to regain the confidence in America that we can do it. And I think most of us believe in that. So it is of the utmost importance that our candidate is able to articulate a vision as to how to get our economy growing again so people can get back to work. So you're right. I think most members probably will end up not endorsing in the primary. We'll wait till the nominee is chosen. And I would probably say I put myself in that category of saying that we're going to be supporting a candidate with a vision from sort of the common sense conservative principles that our candidate will have. And if you look at the field of candidates, I think what is apparent, they're all in stark contrast to the vision that is being put forward by the president currently. And as I indicated, I think that the policies being promoted by the White House right now are taking our nation in the wrong direction, and that's why November 12 affords us the ability to provide a correction.
This young lady, please.
Hi. You spoke a fair deal about being fair, providing fair opportunities to all Americans. So how is Congress providing fair opportunity for underprivileged families and students across America by blocking every effort the Obama administration has had to provide help for them? Are you going to implement these ideas after elections? What are Americans supposed to do within the time remaining for Congress, and what are Americans supposed to do in the current time with all the blocking that's been going on? How are they supposed to view that when they hear that we need fair opportunities, but when they see in Washington that these fair opportunities are pretty much not being provided?
Right, it's an excellent question because I think the president always says we can't wait, and it's true. The American people can't wait till the next election, which is why we're saying let's try and put aside the politics and campaigning and do get some work done. We have in the House consistently said to the president, look, we're not going to agree with your entire jobs bill because we don't believe that the direction it takes us and more stimulus spending and higher taxes is something that helps people right now. But there are elements of the bill that we will take up. And in the House, we took up 4 bills last week. 2 weeks prior in session, we took up other bills and measures that were consistent with the president's vision and what he wants. And so what we've got to do is to find areas where we can agree. I mean, I think it's probably a given. Most people understand that the two sides are not going to agree on everything. I always like to say no two people agree on everything. My wife and I are about to celebrate our 22nd anniversary, and I can assure you we don't agree on everything. But we found a way to manage to raise a family and hopefully have produced and raised kids that will be successful in their own right, because we found a way to work together and find common ground. That's what we've got to do in Washington, as people do in their daily lives, as any business people here would do. I know when I was a businessman, that's what you do. You find out where the two sides differ, set that aside, transcend those, and come together where you can strike a deal and push things forward. And we can do that. We can do that in the charter school area I spoke about. The President's been very outspoken in his support of that. His Secretary of Education as well. I know he's worked a lot with Governor Jeb Bush in trying to see how we can move forward. Well, we can set aside differences and work on that. There are other areas in the immigration realm that we can work together on. We may not be able to get comprehensive immigration, but we can try and allow for strengthening our laws of legal immigration. Get rid of the antiquated provisions that preclude the world's best and brightest from staying here. I know if you look at the STEM program, PhD degrees and master's programs here at A&M, disproportionately, like most major research universities, there are foreign nationals disproportionately attending. We want job creators, the best and the brightest, the thinkers, the innovators, to stay here to help our economy grow. Well, I think all of us agree on that. Let's do that. Just because we differ on some of the other issues, let's at least try and find where we can agree together and help the people so they don't have to wait.
And that will be done in the meantime instead of waiting after next November.
And we are doing it now.
Thank you.
Okay. Unfortunately, our time is limited, and I notice we have a lot of questioners. I ask that we add no more questioners to the lines. We'll try to get through everyone that's online right now. We'll go to this young man now.
Howdy, Congressman. Welcome to Texas A&M University. As a young conservative here at Texas A&M, I feel like there's a lack of effort by the GOP to get young conservatives and young Republicans to the voting booths. In 2008, there was a record number of young people, as young, I mean under 30, to vote, and as you know, they voted for the wrong candidate. So is there any more effort, or what needs to be done by the GOP in order to get more conservatives like myself to the voting booth to vote for someone who's going to vote for the right candidate this time in 2012?
Well, howdy. I am here and honored to be here, and one of the reasons is for that. I have spoken at several of America's greatest universities over the last year, and in trying to take the message that it is free enterprise, free market, it's ingenuity, it's opportunity that's made this country. And the fact is that it is fairness to make sure that we provide that opportunity to everyone. And so I believe that our message is one of job creation and entrepreneurialism and innovation. That's how America can lead. And our job has to be to sort of bridge the gap of where the public is, young people included, and where the policymakers are in terms of what conservative policy, what pro-free enterprise policy means as far as America's leadership in the 21st century. Because you're the leaders of the 21st century. You're the ones that are going to take this country and maintain our position. So I appreciate what you're doing and your question. I will say that we do have a job to do. You're right about the prior election. And it wasn't just that the younger generation turned out in any disproportionate numbers, because I think the numbers would say it just was very lopsided towards the other candidate, which means we have work to do. I believe that our message is a jobs message, opportunity, and that's what 012 is going to be about. So I'm excited to work alongside you to make sure we turn that around.
Yes,
Thanks for what
thank
you
you.
do.
God bless.
Okay. Sir?
Gig 'em.
Congressman Cantor, it's a pleasure to see you and hear you today. I feel very fortunate to be a student here. My name is Captain Rob Altman. I'm from the United States Army. In my job, sir, indecision or quick decisions can lead to catastrophic events. I met a gentleman at the Eisenhower building who told me that as officers we were supposed to be politically neutral yet politically savvy. So in the interest of being savvy, my father-in-law, who in my opinion, someone who I really respect, who is an American dream, comes from a family of sharecroppers and a small gas station owner in Milford, Texas, and over 40 years of working for State Farm has done quite well for himself and has supported your party on numerous occasions. He wanted me to convey this to you, sir, that he is concerned about the credibility of the party with respect to looking at other forms of revenue. And so for me, sir, what I would humbly submit is that having attended a China conference recently where we hear a grand strategy panel, for me as an aspiring strategist, our greatest, not our greatest strategic threat, but one of them certainly is our economy. It is not conventional, sir. We certainly have forces that can defeat that. But I would submit, sir, that we need to, as you have stated, look inwardly and fix America first. And so in closing, you may have heard the story about a gentleman who was from your state, or at least attended school there, Captain George C. Marshall, who when a commander walked by and asked him how things were going, he essentially told him that the operations were really messed up. But Captain George C. Marshall later became a general, sir, and you know that as well as I. So in any event, sir, I encourage you and your colleagues to continue to fight in a collaborative effort to reduce spending, help the people that need to be helped, and sir, I look forward to serving with you in Washington.
Thank you, Captain, and thank you for your service. We honor you and we appreciate it. If I could just take a second to respond to the question about revenues and your father's question about a new approach. You know, what we've always said is that we do need more revenues. When the country's operating at, the federal government operating at 15% of revenue intake and spending in excess of 23, 24%, there's a problem. We need more revenues. We believe that revenues come from a growing economy. And how do we get back to that? And that's why the traditional, conventional suggestion, all we need to do is raise taxes and we'll produce more revenue, it's not sustainable. And then when you look at the real problem and the deficit, I mean, if you look at it for 3 years running plus now, we've incurred over $1 trillion a year in deficit. And that means you could wipe out the entire discretionary part of the budget that's saved for the entitlement programs, the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. You still, last year, would have a $500 billion deficit. That's how bad it is. So the problem is the health care entitlements. That we know that. Demographically speaking, they're weighing down the country because we can't afford the current system. And so we need to address that. You can't, if you look at it, the revenues, here's the problem. 10,000 people a day turn 65. And 10,000 people a day become eligible for Medicare. And so Medicare, how's that paid for? Through premiums and taxes. The revenue stream from those cover only a little over half the cost of the Medicare program. So that means every day times 10,000, you are 50% in the hole. That's the problem. So you can't tax your way out of that. You can't grow your way out of that. You have got to reform the system. And going back to the question of the budget and the appropriations, the reason why our budget was so controversial is because we actually proffered a plan to say, look, here's a suggestion on how you reform it and deal with that 50% in the hole every day times 10,000. And then obviously politically we became very attacked, much maligned for that. But we said at least let's go for a generation, fix the problem so we can start to grow again. And if not, if you're not going to do that, and you're going to ask to raise taxes, get more revenue through taxes, what you're doing is kicking the can and actually digging the hole deeper. And so that means if I were here asking you to pay more taxes, I'd be in return, hopefully, in however many years, when they say that the benefits of that adjustment would run out, justifying the increase in taxes, and asking to pay more. So you're basically saying if you want to raise taxes right now and you don't want to fix the problem, you're throwing good money after bad. And you are also, by saying you want to raise taxes, exacerbating the other real crisis, which is jobs in the economy. Because to me, it's counterintuitive to think you ought to raise taxes on investment and capital growth if that's what you need to produce jobs. So again, Captain, thank you for the question and thought. We're trying to fix the problem and would like to do so we can all grow again.
Sir, thanks very much. And I might add, I am honored to serve, and there are many more than I who have sacrificed more than I and my family. But thank you. I remain fascinated by change management. So thank you, sir, and I hope that you can implement that, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to this young man here.
Congressman, thank you so much for coming. My name is
Howdy.
Howdy.
I'm sort of getting the hang of that now.
I can tell you're doing very well. My name is Michael Sobolik. I'm a student at the Bush School currently. And my question refers back to the first question that was addressed towards you regarding appropriations and budgets and such. And you addressed the issue of baseline budgeting. And I'm very grateful as an American, as a citizen, that this Congress is addressing and calling what isn't really a cut. You know, if it's not a cut, it's not a cut. It's still growing. And I'm grateful for that. But we also, I see that this is one of very, very few Congresses who has had the courage to do that. And my question is there anything that we can be doing currently to lock in that perspective of calling a cut what it really is and not calling a government that's growing more slowly a cut? And like I said, I very much appreciate your perspective in the current Congress that's doing it. My fear is that years from now, another Congress is going to come that doesn't share that perspective, and we're going to go right back to our old ways again.
Thank you, and I appreciate the commitment to fiscal discipline. It is how the country was built. We all know in America you try not to spend money you don't have, and that's the principle. And unfortunately, over decades, and both sides have a lot of blame to bear, but it really is a fact that promises have been made that the country is unable to afford to keep if we're going to try and maintain a continued upward trend in our standard of living. That's what it's about. So I'd encourage you to continue to be engaged. We have to be focused on simplicity of message because it's hard to talk about baseline budgeting every day if you go into a coffee shop to get a cup of coffee. People are busy in their daily lives trying to deal with the challenges they have. And we're trying to, again, bridge that gap. There's a lot of outlets for us to sort of engage dialogue. One thing we're doing in the new majority in the House is we're trying to engage in the social media. And we're actually having a developer's garage hosted by Facebook and myself and the minority whip in the House to bring software developers who write applications for iPads and the rest to come and begin to use the information that we produce to create applications to be able to attract more young people into the debate. So I applaud your effort. Keep going.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Sir?
Congressman Cantor, thank you very much for being here today. My name is Ryan Davenport, and I'm an education major here at Texas A&M, and so whenever you talked about education, you obviously caught my interest. You tarried into sort of the fact that, we need to be giving students a hand up rather than a handout, and that parents need to get involved, but there's also another critical component to that. And my question is, how do we convince our best and brightest to go into the field of education rather than becoming doctors and lawyers in some of those super saturated fields? How do we convince them that the classroom is a noble calling?
That is absolutely a challenge. And I think first we need to work towards compensation structures that reward merit, merit-based compensation structures. That's where America succeeds. We're a society based on merit, and it's about working hard and about meeting the expectations. And I think if more people would be assured that our education system is infused with competition, that it's about accountability and the results matter, that we probably can get more young people such as yourself interested in pursuing that goal. And I've supported policies in the past that try and put incentives in place.
Okay, this young man.
Thank you for coming here. I'm a master's student of finance. My name's Jack. You talk in great extent about how we should ensure equal opportunity, but not ensure equal handout. But in the last decades, we have seen not only an increase in income gap, but a drastic decrease in social mobility. That means if you're born in the lower class, you're less likely in 2010 to move up to middle class or upper class. What has your party done to ensure that trend is reversed?
Well, that is what our goal is. As I said, our focus should be in figuring out how to accelerate income mobility. And I believe that empowerment is the key to doing that. And empowering different people who are in different conditions requires a lot of thought. And we've got, you take the 9-year-old inner city child that needs that help, that stability. Got to find out how to do that in a way, whether it's community support, whether it's charter schools and the rest. It starts with education. So it is so important that we focus on that. While everyone's talking about jobs and the economy, remember, you're right, we don't want to lose that 9-year-old little girl. Then when we have the working mom that's out there struggling, how does she go refine her confidence that she can keep going? Well, right now, most working moms, they want the ability to do what they can for their kids, just like my grandmother, my mother, hopefully your mother, and the rest. And so how do we provide her with the tools to give her children more stability so they can make it here to A&M? And so our party is about trying to find the empowerment to do so. And then when you graduate from here, you want to be able to find a job and seek opportunity or start a business. So if you want to start a business, you got to have access to capital. I don't know how your credit card's doing or whether your family's going to provide the bank, but most people can't do that if they want to have a startup. So we've got to provide an easier way for entrepreneurs to do that. We passed bills, we've got an agenda that's focusing on making it easier for entrepreneurs to get their start. It's through lower taxes, it's less regulations, it's providing easier access, and a government that's not an adversary. That's really, I think, a big piece of it. And so we also, today, are hearing a lot about individuals who feel that some who are so successful need to pay their fair share and pay more. Well, again, who's to decide that? Who's to decide what it is, what a fair share and more is? And so, you know, if you look at sort of tax policy right now, you're approaching 46, 47% of the American people who don't pay income taxes. Now, is that fair? I think it's fair if everybody's got skin in the game, even $1. So we ought to be pursuing policies that we put out there that actually level that playing field, bring down rates for everybody, bring people in, let's all do this together. Because it doesn't work to go aim at the top and say, pull you down so I can go up. That just doesn't work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last question.
Congressman, I teach a financial statement analysis class, and the students are here in the audience today. And one of the compliments to the innovation and the entrepreneurship that you talked about has been that the United States has had financial markets that were the envy of the world. And I would like to hear your comments on the financial markets in the United States today in general. But there's one specific rule that Congress has been debating that we'd like to hear more about, and that's the Facebook rule, as the media has dubbed it. Essentially saying that now you can have companies like Facebook that could have up to 1,000 investors and not have to follow SEC regulations, provide the financial statements that allow us to understand that company and make an informed decision whether to invest. And secondly, in relation to fairness, which was a theme of your speech, ordinary Americans don't have access to invest in those sorts of companies. It's only if you're a millionaire that you'd be a qualified investor to invest. So I'd appreciate your thoughts on those two.
Right. And I think you answered your first question by saying that the rule which will allow which would allow a Facebook to eventually seek more investors without having to go public and under the SEC regulation is meant to apply to only sophisticated high net worth investors. And so the reason for that is obvious because, you know, many folks out there don't have sort of investment as their business, and pouring through those kind of financial reports of Facebook and others may not be what they can do. And so if you're not going to have the protections that some of the regulations provide, you ought not be exposed to that kind of risk, and that's the thinking behind it. It also, the thought behind the proposed rule is to allow companies, maybe not like Facebook, but there are a lot of companies out there who say, we can't go public because the cost of going public through the rules like laws like Sarbanes-Oxley and others have made it so costly for us, it doesn't make sense. But meanwhile, they want the ability to access more capital because they want to grow. And so the proposed rule is to try and deal with a situation like that. And I think overall, we've got a challenge in the capital markets. I mean, there are plenty of people making a lot of money right now in the capital markets. And, you know, they have capital to work with and technology to invest and are able to get out there, make markets in instruments and vehicles, equities, options, and the rest, and play on indexes and exchanges worldwide. And then you sort of look to most of us with 401ks and pensions and the rest thinking, well, wait a minute, how am I getting my fair share there? And that's where we ought to be focused. What's fair? Again, it's about equality opportunity here. Everybody should have a fair shot at an equal return in this arena. And so if we can be transparent with our laws and regulations, if we can make sure that our markets are accessible and protect the investor so that they're not subject to the whims of those who may have an inside track. And we're particularly focused on this because look what happened in 2008 when nearly the whole system collapsed and the federal government had to step in. And we have to be careful, and what we're working on in this area is trying to be careful not to overreact to make sure the regulations are sensible and don't, you know, quash what is a real important asset to this country. You know, we've had the most sophisticated capital markets that have enabled our economy to prosper and us to lead. We don't want that to go overseas. We want to continue America to be the place where people do go to go public, to access capital. Because if not, there are plenty of other countries willing to step in, and currencies. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our program for this afternoon. I'd like to thank the Congressman once again for being with us, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. Thank you once again. Have a good afternoon.
And I'd like to thank Ms. Crichton, Flo Crichton, as well as President Ms. Bush. Thank you very much. Thank all of you. Thank you.